back.
There we go.
It's fine. We can edit this in post. It's all good. Well, I
Cool.
mean, as long as you guys can get some heat in the shed or the shanty,
Yeah, I gotta
that's
say,
step one.
have you seen a picture of it? Do I need to send you a picture of what
Uh,
we're talking? You
I'm
can like insert it
I'm
with your
friends
fancy editing.
with everybody at the game on Facebook or Twitter or whatever.
Yeah.
So whether it's Josh or Zabe or whoever, I have seen the photos, and
Okay.
yes,
So you know what I'm
it
talking about.
it looks like an ice shanty from Nina. All right, that's what it looks like.
It's a fancy ice shanty
It
though.
is.
Everybody would walk by and inevitably people would say, hey, can I climb in? And like, well, no, because of insurance.
Yeah.
But you can take all the pictures you want. And there are people like, especially opposing fans, because Packers fans that had seen it once, maybe you drop by a second time, maybe you drop by a third time, but the opposing fans that would come in, I mean, it didn't matter. Even Vikings fans were getting a kick out of it in week 18. So yeah, it was fun. It was great to do the show out there. It was a lot better to do the show out there in, say, November than it was, but we really dodged weather. So if we can work on, because the one really, really cold snap that we had, the team was in Miami, so we were fine. But yeah, to count on that for a second year.
Yeah, not not great.
The odds of that happening again, probably not spectacular.
Doug, you've been around Milwaukee sports when there were no sports stations, when there was one sports station that was a daytime, nighttime signal. Then there was the second sports station, which you were a part of. Then there was, you had newspaper, which was the dominant form. And then there were these little sputtering websites when websites were new. And then all of a sudden there becomes an FM. Then there's another FM and a third FM. Now the AM, FM you and I used to work for doesn't care about making any money anymore. So they could put that. What's your take on the changing landscape in your quarter century or whatever it is in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, and sports media?
Yeah, when you talk quarter century, I'm like, shut up. Oh no, you're not. You're not wrong.
It might be longer.
It's what year is this? 2023.
This is 23. Yeah. So if you started in 96.
Well, I started TMJ in 96.
Yeah.
I started in college in 90, so that makes this 33 years.
33 years.
Yeah. Golly. I have to wrap my head around that.
Yeah, that feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah, right. I think, listen, competition is good for everybody. And I admire some of the shows that they have over on one of my old stations. I was part of the first local lineup on what is now the frequency of 94.5 ESPN. I did a 6 to 8 nighttime show. You joined me on it a couple of times. And I am still friends with everybody over there now in the Avenue, I think is what they call it, the old Grand Avenue, but on Wisconsin Avenue. I keep wanting to say Capitol Drive, but old
not
habits
anymore.
die hard. I know.
Not anymore.
It's Radio City without radio, and it still is always going to be weird for me. But those guys over there, I'm still friends with all of them. I respect and admire what they do, and I think the competition is good for everybody. But the landscape has changed really, really dramatically over the last like you said, I mean, quarter century. I mean, I go back to when I first started in Milwaukee in 1996, and WAUK was, in a small building behind the Walmart in Waukesha. And it was, like you said, the sun up, sundown. And they were just trying to make it. This is before Craig Karmazin bought that station. And it was it was such an underserved market. Now, when there were 3 FM stations and, we've got a second, the Big 920 is still doing sports. We still do some local sports on it as well. We still do Admirals on it. Bill Michaels has his show on the Big 920 as well. So we have 2 stations. One's predominantly national, but still does local, and one's predominantly local that does still some national. For a while there, I think we might have been a little bit overserved. And now it's maybe come back down a little bit because TMJ was the biggest sports station in 96, even though there was only one sports show that was on every night, plus all the play-by-play. But I think that's good. I think that the more jobs there are, the more stations there are. I was sad when SSP decided that they didn't want to do local anymore. Yeah, they just wanted to, turn. I think Sparky's still there, but other than that, they just flipped the bird. They really to their listeners, unfortunately.
They did.
And in the radio biz, as putting it on the bird just means that's just the satellite, but it has kind of a double entendre there. So I think the 2 main sports stations kind of duking it out. That's probably where Milwaukee should be. And as long as you're local is always going to win in a market like Milwaukee. And I think in most markets around the country, national shows, with the exception of a couple of them, Dan Patrick has been doing it really well for a really long time. Rich Eisen sometimes with his guests I enjoyed. Jim Rome has been doing it for a long time. But other than that, I mean, there aren't that many national shows that cut through the noise. And I worked at a national network for a long time too. So kind of having both perspectives of it is like, man, local radio is where it's at if you do it right. And I think that's one of the things that I really love about the game is that we're committed to doing local and committed to doing local right.
When 1250 died, and I know things didn't end for you the way that you wanted them to end at 1250 when they let you go, but when 1250 died 6 months, 8 months ago, whatever it was, how did you feel?
Sad. Yeah, I was sad. Sad for the people that lost their jobs. I was sad that, it was an opportunity for us at the game, but yeah, you can't look at it that way because it would be so easy for so many people to dismiss, SSP was a station that was in last place and nobody listened to. No, that's not true. That's not true. They had very loyal listeners.
Yeah, they did.
Who, and some of the most loyal listeners that I've ever encountered in my career, which is now 33 years. I don't know if you've heard.
Almost 3.5 decades.
Yeah. Really loyal listeners. So if you were an old SSP listener, all I can do is invite you to come over to the game. And, if you hear what you like, we'd love to have your business. But I was sad when it went under, not only for the people who lost their jobs, and you never want to see anybody lose their jobs, but it was something that I was a part of for almost 5 years. And it's been more than a decade that I've been gone there, but people will still come up to me and say, I love that show with you and Wicket. That was the best show that, it started my day every day. And it's like more than a decade later, people still say that to me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's gratifying, and it's nice, but to have something that you poured as much effort into, and you were there longer than I was, obviously, but something that you poured as much effort into it as I did and you did, just to see it end the way that it ended. Yeah, that was sad for me.
I went through periods of anger and sadness, just because
I read your tweets.
I don't have the career without, and I not to get sappy, Doug, but I don't have my career without 1250, and I don't have my career without you, because I was in Ann Arbor and things were about to go real south because a new company was taking over, and our old PD, Ryan McGuire, had just left for 1250, and I don't know if I have the balls to make a jump. Like, I still might be there making $29,000 a year if 1250 didn't happen.
Sure.
And my career progressed into news talk down in Kansas City, and now doing weirdly a rock show here in Des Moines. Like, it's very, very strange.
I'll tell you what, no one will ever say that your career hasn't been varied.
but the thing is, I've been talking to the same audience. I've been talking to a 42-year-old male for the entire time. Like, it's just a little more sports, a little less sports, a little more sports, a little less sports.
Sure.
But I was livid. As we're talking about history and your time, tell people who are listening to this podcast or watching it what you thought of me when we first came out for an audition in December of 2006.
When I first my first impression of you is, here's this cocky, how much can I swear on this?
It's fine. Tim Scott wanted to air the podcast one time, but he never got back to me, so swear all you want.
Here's this cocky motherfucker who thinks he knows everything about everything. But there was something about that cocky motherfucker that I liked. And it's like, you know what? I think that, I was 34 when we started working together. And so I was looked at as like kind of the old man. And I'm like, I'm not that old, but here's this kid.
26 years old.
26. Okay. You're 26 years old. And I don't know if we leaned into it at all, but I probably acted a little bit older than I was, and you probably acted a little bit younger than you were.
Yeah.
And
25, actually. 2000. I was 25. I wasn't even 26 yet. I was 25.
Yeah. Okay. So
I just entered our demo.
Right.
Of men 25 to 54.
But here's the other thing. You were smart and you were talented. And that's the thing that has stayed with me really throughout. I mean, it's been a long time since we worked together, and I've worked with some great co-hosts. I mentioned Gene Miller before. I mean, I learned something from Gene every day. But he's known for his time with Bob Reitman. So there were people after Reitman and Miller ended their show. It's like, well, Bob Reitman's retired. What happened to Gene? Gene moved over to TMJ and was there for over a decade, hosting their signature morning show and doing it at a Hall of Fame level. An incredible run that he has had that will wind up with him in the Wisconsin Broadcasters Hall of Fame if I have to make the plaque and tack it to the wall myself. So maybe with the exception of Gene, and I don't want to disparage anybody else that I've ever done a show with, but you were the most talented person just with coming through with ideas, whether it was the sound off line and the way that you edited it, the quick wit, the fact that you could turn on any subject on a dime. Yeah, it was I hope nobody sells your talent short, and I hope you never do as well, because you're one of the absolute most talented people I've ever worked with in my life.
My, well, thank you. The check is in the mail. No, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and
of course,
that's amazing to hear someone say, and it's very much appreciated. And I don't take compliments very well, so please don't think that I don't.
Yeah, none of us do.
When I say thank you, people ask me what it was like when I got to Milwaukee, a city that I didn't know about. Like, I'll be honest, I didn't know Marquette was in Milwaukee until I started working with you. I had no idea.
Okay.
All right. But with all due respect to the Golden Eagles and the Warriors, had no idea. Had no clue. That was
a lot of people mix them up with Duquesne because of the Q.
Okay.
And Duquesne, it's like Duquesne's in Pittsburgh.
I could see that.
Yeah.
But people say, what was it like to go to Milwaukee? And honestly, my first thought was, I'm going to go there and then I'm going to bolt after 3 years. And then it became a home. But, I remember the first 6 months or 3 months or 6 months or whatever, because I joined right when the Bears and Colts were playing in the Super Bowl, and we did a show on the road. And then it became baseball season. And baseball is my weakest sport, but I know it's your love. It's your first love. And I remember what you told me. You're like, get a baseball preview issue, read it. You and our PD, McGuire, said, get a preview issue, read it, learn the Brewers, know the roster. And I just sat back for 3 to 4 months because I didn't know. Favre was still a Packer. He was going through the retirement, not retirement.
Yeah, we went through that together.
So I kind of jumped right into that, but I sat there and learned from you, from Gary, from Cliff Saunders when he was there, from Sparky. Wisconsin was a totally new world. And while I may have been a cocky mother, I knew going in, I didn't know anything about the Brewers, the Bucks, the Packers, the Badgers. Apparently where Marquette was. And I needed your guidance. And then our first producer, one of 5 we had, Marcus Paff, Marcus Brody. Again, I say I wouldn't have my career without 1250 and without you, but I mean it. This podcast that I'm doing right now, I know more about Wisconsin sports, I say. I know more about Wisconsin sports than I do about any other team. And I grew up, half an hour from Detroit. So the everything that I have learned has come from watching you and then people who came through 1250, whether it was Chuck or Bill or whoever. It's just been, and that goes back to my sadness and my anger of when 1250 died. It was that was the foundation of my career. Yeah, I worked at a station in Ann Arbor for 7 years beforehand, but it became real when I got to Milwaukee.
Yeah, no, it's but you absorbed it though too. And that, right. Well, not everybody does. Some people look at Milwaukee as a stepping stone, and you never did. You embraced Milwaukee, and Milwaukee embraced you back. And sometimes it's Michigan.
Yeah, I got a lot of that still.
Occupation.
Fair enough. Yeah,
right. Sure, but you never hit it. And you came to love the Packers. You came to love everything about the city. Yeah, there you go.
Wearing this AJ Dillon hoodie that I've got on right now.
Oh, very nice. It's Quadzilla right there.
Yeah.
Similar,
Share my body type. Me and AJ Dillon.
100%.
100%.
I can't tell the two of you apart.
Well, what's funny was when we got pregnant the second time, we were in Kansas City. And when we got pregnant and we found out we were having twins, there were 3 cities we could move to. It was either Detroit, where my family is, Des Moines, where Lee's family is and where we eventually wound up, or it was Milwaukee. Because I had a decade there. Lee almost had a decade there. Like, we had a foundation of friends and a network that we could, lean on to babysit if we had to go to the dentist or so. Like, those kinds of things are so vitally important with these kids. But Milwaukee is truly like the Milwaukee home brand. Lee and I still rock that here in Iowa. Like, it's still, if they're ever, and our company has an affiliate, has a cluster in Milwaukee. Like, we're thinking what happens one day if. And that would be one of the only cities we would even fathom moving to, even though it's even colder than Des Moines.
This winter hasn't been bad, though. This winter's been actually pretty good.
We just woke up to 4 more inches of snow here. It's like, where the hell did this come from?
We got a dusting. I'm looking out my window right now in my studio. I'm looking into my backyard, and I can still see some of the grass, so we're okay.
Okay, well, that's good. Hey, I appreciate you coming on, Doug. I'm glad we didn't spend any time talking about Aaron Rodgers and Rob Gronkowski and the comment about an MVP, because I think that's all completely overblown. I'm glad we didn't talk about Aaron Jones and the franchise, all these like, it's good to catch up with you. And it's good
definitely.
to talk about, the Packers and the game and the success you guys are having, because I know for the next 10 years it's going to be you guys and ESPN going back and forth and who can pluck this guy and who can do this. And having those teams, the Badgers and the Packers, I mean, you guys have a great head start.
We appreciate that. Thanks very much. And it was great catching up with you. And we need to do this a little bit more often, as opposed to the text chats of the Guillotine Fantasy Football League, which those are always entertaining.
Yeah, I feel like kissing your sister. We tied. I tied in the title game because of the DeMar Hamlin situation, which is bigger than fantasy football. I know. But
okay, Skip.
Yeah, I know. Stay in touch.
We'll do. Absolutely.
Continued success.